Welcome everyone. Stop coronavirus now. Stop coronavirus and thrive now. You know, this is it's not a pandemic other than a pandemic of fear. So I'm going to talk to everybody a little bit about fear today. And boy, the videos sure got my face all purple here. Hold on a second. Maybe I can do a little correcting this from my camera. One second. Do that right now. So let's just continue.
Are we okay to record this?
Okay. I'm going to just go ahead and continue the way the video is. If everyone can keep themselves muted for now, I'm going to do a little bit of a introduction. And then my whole goal here today is to help everyone have access to my full training, which the whole Power Heal system is available in a membership area along with a applied lymphology course. So we're going to dangle the carrot. I'm going to give some really valuable information with this particular broadcast within the 40 minutes or so that we have. And the next event, I'm going to actually teach more techniques. There's going to be a few things here that people will be able to walk away with that could save their lives or help reverse serious conditions. And I'll give some examples of that. So, but my whole goal right up front is to help get the whole program. If someone has one issue, it's just a positive pressure blowout. Have you ever taken a big, long, skinny balloon and blown it up? And where does it have the first bulge happen in it? My hands disappeared. When you take the long, skinny balloons that they used to make animals out of, it's because that's the weakest part of the balloon, right? And is it easier to blow up the balloon the first time or the second time? The second time, right? Why? Because it's already stretched out. In fact, the experts who blow up balloons, who are professionals, they actually will stretch the balloon to create a weak spot, and all the areas of the balloon where they want to have those bulges happen, they'll create the weak spots really quickly. That makes it easier. So our body is the same way, with one exception. It's easier to blow it up the second time, true, but our body can regenerate. If we bring the body back in the healthy environment, it can regenerate. So with this class, I've been an expert on immunology. I was raised by one of the top immunologists and physiologists who is his version of it is lymphology, which is really the immune system. Our lymphocytes are the best fighters in the body. So I'm going to be giving some terms that you may not have heard of, but I'll help qualify you. I'll help you understand what those terms are in lay terms. So physiology, for example, means functionality. And cellular physiology is the basis of all physiology because our whole body is made up of cells. And if they're all healthy, are we healthy or sick? So it's when our cells stop working, that's when we start having problems. And they name the problem according to where the cells don't work, how it affects that part of the body, or who discovered it. Who cares who discovered it? They just want credit for your problem or what? I mean, it's ridiculous. The important thing to understand is what mechanisms are involved, because if we can reverse the mechanisms, can we reverse the diseases? And when it comes to mechanisms, my father discovered the engine of the cells, the sodium-potassium pump, and wrote formulas based on his physics background for what shuts them off and how to turn them back on that have never been challenged still today by any top medical mind. All the top medical minds, including the last Elliott Cresson gold medal recipient, have totally accepted them whenever they've seen them. They've never challenged them. They've been presented to the top medical minds and never challenged. They were accepted without debate the first time they were presented. And That was in 1981 in Montreal, Canada. So I'm gonna just to give you a little bit of background, I've also made some advancements in physiology. I was shown how to produce and transport stem cells for every part of the body every day, and not just one part of the body one day like they do with needles. Right? So I was able to reattach a PCL ligament 25 years ago that was completely severed, with the top doctor saying that would be absolutely impossible to do without surgery. It was totally severed. They said it would just be absorbed by the body over time if I didn't get the surgery. And I didn't have the proof that I had actually done it, other than because the MRIs are really expensive. Wasn't going to just fork out another $5,000 or whatever for another MRI. But I had another accident 20 years later, which was 5 years ago. While I was on a motorcycle, a car pulled out right in front of me, and I went sailing over the car with a lot of injuries. More injuries all at once than I'd ever had in my entire life. And I'd re-injured the knee, re-injured a shoulder, had a bad head injury, bulged disc in the spine, a torn disc in the L5-S1, a lot of different things happened. And I never did painkillers. I totally healed all of it without surgery. And this time I got the after MRI of that knee injury that I'd had 20 years earlier. So some of you might have heard me speak before where I hadn't spoke as strongly about my ability to help produce stem cells. I've had the technology, I've mentioned it, but some of you haven't paid really close attention. And now I'm leading more with the strengths because, why? Because now more of the cards are in, meaning more of that evidence is in. And so being able to have the proof that I reattached my PCL 25 years ago, 2.5 years ago, I was in New York when one of my friends here in California was hit by a car, and I am in California right now. I have a view of, right now, Coronado Island with the San Diego Bay, and some of you saw that about a week ago or so. Anyway, I am here, and but I was in New York 2.5 years ago with a bunch of my West Indian friends, and I was holding a big class, and one of my friends was hit by a car. The doctors at Cedars-Sinai, which is an insurance-run hospital in Hollywood that makes a fortune on heart transplants, and he had the word donor on his driver's license, I believe. The doctors said he would never be able to breathe on his own because the right and left hemisphere were severed. The neurons that connect the right and left brain had been severed. They said, again, that he would never be able to breathe on his own. So I thought, what a great opportunity for me with the more evidence that I have of what I've been able to do, and knowing that they make just a fortune on heart transplants, and that we've been able, when the stem cells get in the brain, they call them pre-neural cells. They can regenerate even with a lot of inflammation. They can rebuild everything. Where most cells shut off very quickly without oxygen, the stem cells have special qualities where they can still continue. And I'm going to be talking about a little bit more about why I think that's possible scientifically, the science behind it that I've learned. And I don't think I know it all, but we keep learning more. So anyway, the doctors again said that he would never be able to even breathe on his own. They planned on pulling the plug within 24 hours, and I just happened to be doing a training that day. So I live broadcasted, and I put my reputation on Facebook about what I plan to do with him, put my reputation on the line again, which I've done many, many times. And about 130 people were able to be part of his healing because of that. That's how many people were part of that live broadcast within that 24-hour period. And when they unplugged him from life support, he was breathing on his own, where the top doctor said that would be absolutely impossible. Right? A lot of miracles have happened. Right now, the big scare is coronavirus. I'm going to start talking about how to solve some of the big issues of it. We want to be as healthy as possible. Really, it's killing the weak. We want to be able to activate the most powerful cells in our body. The stem cells are also the precursor to, it's where the white blood cells come from. In fact, and lymphocytes are made up of white blood cells. They're like the special forces in the body, where the white blood cells are more like the army. These are like our military forces that kill all the bad guys. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about how that happens more and more. But they can't tell the difference, in fact, between a white blood cell and a stem cell just by looking by their appearance. They have to look at their behavior. So most of the time they'll get them in a culture and look at their behavior if they have the qualities of a white blood cell or a stem cell, because they look identical. And there's not everybody knows this, but now they've been saying, you know, I just had an older student of mine who is on this podcast, this webinar right now, and it's been a long time since he's heard me speak. And he saw some things about me about helping zero-convert AIDS in the middle of the big AIDS scare, with top medical minds saying that would be impossible. Right? That was in 1993, 1994. And in fact, I wrote an article on it on the 1994-95 school year, and at presenting at the September, in the 1995 Congress of Lymphology in Brazil with my father as chairman, because the past presidents there in Brazil love my father. They made him chairman with knowing that we were going to be presenting some of the work that I'd helped discover. And they let me present with my father as the chairman over me. And so I was rubbing shoulders with a lot of the top medical minds my father talked about. One of them, John R. Castley Smith, who's the past president from Australia, was there. And a lot of these guys, like John R. Castley Smith, he's passed away now. So most of the men my father used to talk about are now passed on. But anyway, I was able to meet with some. I'm going to give a quote from John R. Castley Smith too on this broadcast. It's really important. So what does this have to do with how can we help you? Well, if we can help you produce stem cells for every part of your body every day at a level that helps, you know, reattach someone's brain, even though I was in New York and he was in LA, maybe the same actual broadcast that was done for him, maybe you could use that for yourself with what's going on with coronavirus. It's actually in a membership area right now with a Power Hill system in the Applied Lymphology course system. I just went ahead and added that as a bonus. All the other technique videos were done in a television studio, and 3-camera shoot, everything. You know, I'm saying this because an older student of mine now is watching, and all the videos that he had with when we used to use CDs and DVDs, now everything is online. And with what's happened where they're forcing people to go home, it's forcing people like me to do even more online. I'm glad that I'd prepared my home study materials. That's all been online. But my live training now is going online. I'm supposed to be speaking at a live event this weekend, and the last weekend was supposed to be a live event for me. So we've taken, I mean, in-person live. But since they've got this social distancing thing now, and they've shut down meetings for more than 10 people, and they're really cracking down. They don't want anybody to even do any meetings now in California. So it's anyway, they're really cracking down. They're not letting us go to the beach. Here we are, or in the neighborhood that I'm in. There is a little walk that I can do where in the marina that I could be on the water, but they don't, you know, a few nights ago, we went to see the sunset, and there were police there not letting anyone touch the dirt off of the road, right on the beach. So they said it's a national park. All national parks are shut down. Anyway, there's more I could talk about that, but I think that David Wilcox does a really good job explaining why that is. And on my Facebook group called The Race for the Truth, I have several groups, so you need to look for that one. I've posted a repost of one of his recent live broadcasts because it really supports a new program that I produced called The Laws of Empowerment. I think it's something that everyone ought to be listening to right now. And so it's what's really going on behind the scenes. There's other reasons why we don't have big football stadiums full right now, or baseball stadiums full right now of people. There's other reasons behind that don't have anything to do with coronavirus, in my opinion. And there's a lot of good things that are happening, in my opinion. But if you want, again, to know more about that, you need to dive into those two sources that I just gave you. So there's more. Let's talk about some things that are the number one killer in war, because right now we have a pandemic of fear globally. I think this is being done intentionally to help scoop up a lot of the bad guys globally. But the the pandemic of fear that is very real. A lot of people don't know this, but the #1 cause of death for soldiers is fear. And right now, it's a #1 cause of people who are dying, are actually dying of shock. And not everybody's been taught about that part of the coronavirus, but it's a huge part of the problem. The fear factor, what happens when we have fear, I'm gonna go to the soldiers in war. What do? They think, oh no, I just got shot. I'm gonna die now. I see my life force, my blood leaving my body. I can't believe this happened. And they're so afraid of the death that they die of the fear. It dilates blood capillary pores, and out comes the blood protein in water faster than our lymphatic system can retrieve it. And most of you don't know that you have more lymph vessels than blood vessels, more lymph than blood. You never heard that when they pierced Christ's side, while he's hanging on the cross with a spear of destiny, out came the blood and water, that water was lymph fluid. That we have more of that than we have blood in our body. It's all the clear fluid in the body is lymph. It's the same fluid that's around the single cell of an egg. I'm gonna go ahead and do a little bit of a screen share here. I'm gonna pull up a couple of documents that I know I can show real quick. And let's just go, but you gotta know that the lymph vessels are more extensive than the blood vessels. This is why I'm pulling this chart up here for you. Because the lymph vessels are even more extensive than the blood. And we have more lymph than blood. And why weren't we taught about that? Well, I can tell you as we do this. Here we are. I want you to look at this very carefully. On the top, we actually have a blood capillary. Well, on the bottom, we have a lymphatic capillary, and the cells are in between. So again, what you were looking at with that chart, on the top of that was red is a blood capillary. On the bottom is a lymphatic capillary with the cells in between. And I'm going to use my hand as a chart. Everybody make a fist out of your hand. Extend your thumb and index finger. Here we go. So visualize your thumb as the lymphatic vessel, your blood is your blood, you can do it this way too, but visualize your finger as the blood vessel, your thumb as the lymphatic vessel with the cells in between. When they're close together, there's no disease. The cells are healthy there. Their life processes are turned on. Where you pull them further and further apart, that represents a positive pressure blowout with trapped blood proteins and excess fluid. And it doesn't always happen this way. Cells dehydrate in excess fluid too. An example of that is pneumonia. Pneumonia is where the lungs fill up with fluid. That's one of the main topics of this talk, is because that's a lot of what people are dying from. Most people, even with AIDS, with HIV and AIDS, they don't die of the HIV virus. They die of all the diseases caused by it. Like pneumonia is on the top of the list. It's also the #1 killer of elderly. And that's when most of the time with the elderly, they break a hip. And in the situation of the broken hip, they end up in a hospital bed where they're recovering and they're not breathing deeply, they're breathing shallow, and they wonder why they're not stimulating the lymphatics even in the lungs enough to prevent the lungs from filling up, and they just fill up with fluid. And because when they're not deep breathing, all the other parts of their body start shutting off too. It's not just about activating the lymphatics in the lungs. The largest lymphatic vessel in the body is right between the lungs, and it's called the thoracic duct. My father would call it the tree trunk of the lymphatic system. And it shoots like a geyser, like an oil well when you take a deep breath. So everyone take a deep breath. It didn't cost you anything to do it. And right at the peak, it shoots like a geyser, like an oil well. Go ahead and let that out. I don't have to guarantee it. We know that the shallow breathing doesn't do that. It's at the peak of the deep breath. Jack Shields had a guy walking and running on a treadmill to see what would activate lymphatics, to see if muscles would activate it, and it didn't do anything. He had him get off the treadmill, take a deep breath, and it shot like a geyser at the peak of the deep breath. So the first time that was presented, and it was in 1979 in Florence, Italy. My father just happened to be there while that was being presented for the first time in history. And he said he would have gone around the world 100 times just to see that done once, because it proves the shallow breather's in trouble. If that's all you knew, is that you can activate your immune system, your lymphatic system, just from the deep breathing alone. How many healing arts have to do with deep breathing? A lot. Most of them have incorporated it. And if they haven't, then they're just dealing with another part of the healing arts. And, you know, like when you deal with massage, you can get results, but you can get limited results if you're not integrating other aspects that really are meant to be integrated with the massage. It's all meant to be integrated, really. All the healing arts in a big grand integration. That's what, you know, really more and more in life, we tend to become more integrated. And the word integrity, it's the root of integration. So I get into a lot of detail in that. In fact, I redefine integrity within the Laws of Empowerment program. This type of material is a prerequisite for that. So we made that available for you. What I want to do again, I want to talk a little bit about the lungs. I meant to say asthma the first time I said, when I was talking about this happening, and that it doesn't always happen with excess fluid being really obvious. I meant to say asthma in that situation, because cells dehydrate in excess fluid, and yet they hydrate and volumize in the healthy environment. In the healthy environment, which is no excess fluid, cells actually volumize. And an example of this, which is like asthma, is with our hands, our fingers, when we're in a tub, or when we go swimming for very long, spend much time in the ocean. We get what's called the pruning effect, which that word alone actually means dehydration, doesn't it? The pruning effect literally suggests dehydration of our cells. We get out of the tub, and then the cells with oxygen again, wasn't really less fluid, they were just enough lack of oxygen to shut the generator off, enough where they're not bringing in the nutrients that volumize the cell. When they fall back out, the cells dehydrate. Well, when the engine turns back on again, that sodium potassium pump, it brings in nutrients that volumize the cell again, and the wrinkles disappear in the hands. I ask people how would they like to do that with other parts of their body. Subpressure aesthetics. I was the one who invented the subpressure aesthetics brand name to explain those principles through. And I've presented at International Aesthetics Association conferences. So let's go ahead move on with this, because asthma, they say that this coronavirus doesn't really show a lot of fluid building up in the lungs. You don't have to show it. It can happen so fast, and it can happen in a way with that type of tissue that it's already been proven because of asthma. It doesn't have to happen where it's obvious that the lungs are, it could be attacking the part of the lung sac that causes those lung sacs to collapse. Also, while it's more also evident that there's more trapped blood proteins there, they'll still call it pneumonia, even if it's not that much of it. It's all the same to me. When you become a certified lymphologist, it ought to all be same to you. There'll be a certain part of the education where we'll say the name of the problem, the name of the disease means nothing anymore. With us, it's all about the mechanisms. If you understand the mechanisms, what's causing the problem, if you can reverse the mechanisms, then you can reverse the disease. So with us, that's where our focus is reversing those mechanisms, like the inflammation. I'm going to go back to that chart again. I'm going to share the screen. I'm going to spend a little bit of time there, and then we're going to do an instant mass healing demo, which I've never allowed to be broadcast over the internet until 2020. I was shown 2020 that it was time to start even doing that. I haven't really led with my strengths as far as showing my strengths publicly. Again, one of the students on the broadcast here, my doc Russ, there's some things that I'm saying now that he's never seen before, because you know, there's reasons. There's been a time where some of the information was meant to be available safely, and I think that time is now. There's a lot of signs that that time is now. So here we go with this, and where I'm going to show this, I'm going to go back to might as well be here. So we're showing this screen share now. So on the top here, where the cursor is, that's actually a lymphatic capillary. Really fast. I'm going to break this down for you. Within the bloodstream, you've got arteries and veins that have a muscle layer around them. So that's not where we get the oxygen or nutrients from the blood directly. The arteries deliver high oxygen nutrient content blood to the capillaries that are full of holes. And they're right at the bed of the cells. They're really the smallest blood vessels, right at the bed of the cells. And with every beat of the heart, positive pressure, and that pushes that water out, the water content that holds the oxygen and nutrients. It dissolved and suspended in solution. And when it comes out to those cells, as it goes to the bed of the cells, in the healthy environment on the left, it shoots all the way across. So all the cells get the oxygen and nutrients, and then it comes right back into the blood, and it dissipates in and out 80 times within every 60 seconds, which is faster than once per second. It's basically with every beat of the heart, this is happening. So the problem is in the disease environment, which is over on the right side here, that's trapped blood proteins. They are the water magnet. They are also the sodium magnet. They also carry the drugs throughout the body. We're talking about the albumin primarily, but when the capillaries dilate, even there's a couple bigger blood proteins that can leave also. And the capillaries dilate with fear. They also dilate with anything that's a poison, anything that damages cells. The cells, like when we strike our finger with a sledgehammer, which I've done before. I broke a finger, the bone, I smashed a finger so hard, 80% of it had blood under it, oozing out the bottom of my finger through the pores. The blood was pushed through the pores, and yet I had zero swelling. That finger recovered very quickly. But I didn't let it swell up. I controlled the swelling part of it. But there was instant bleeding, so I did have a little bit of a clot that was formed, but there was no swelling, which is pretty much unheard of. I didn't lose my fingernail. But I want to tell you, when you damage cells, like with physically causing physical trauma like that, like with a hammer, damaged cells produce histamine and bradykinin, which dilate the blood capillaries and outcome the blood protein in water faster than they normally do. The truth is that albumin, actually, we have leaving the bloodstream all the time. And there's a myth that's still taught at Harvard and all the medical schools called Starling's hypothesis. The Starling's hypothesis is from the 1800s, and it was debunked in 1930 by Cecil K. Drinker at Harvard. And then it was debunked again in 1948 to 63 by H.S. Mearson, that's Hyman Samuel Mearson of Tulane Medical School. And he tagged the blood proteins with radioactive iodine, the albumin in particular, measured the rate at which it left the bloodstream. And we found out we lose the whole albumin content every 24 hours. He published many times. He was one of the top physiologists and on the board, international boards of physiology boards as well. He was also able to publish in the American Heart Association journal in the 60s, proving that we don't even have a positive pressure in our bloodstream without the subpressure lymphatic vessels. So, yeah, that's right. We don't even have a positive pressure in our blood without these subpressure lymphatic vessels. And I'm going to go ahead and do another screen share again. That's what I'm up to. This is an egg, a single cell of a chicken egg. It's basically also, it's a stem cell. And that fluid around it is albumin. It's the same protein and fluid that's around all of our cells. And that stem cell has everything it needs to grow a whole chick, heart beating, breathing, everything without any external source of oxygen. I said I was going to expand a bit more about how stem cells have that ability. And, you know, the reason why is because their genes are tuned perfectly. And one of those gene products is superoxide dismutase, SOD, which was discovered about 53 years ago or so by Dr. Joseph M. McCord, who is the last Elliott Cresson Gold Medal recipient, which is the most prestigious award any doctor or scientist has been able to receive. It puts him in the same company as Nikola Tesla, Alexander Graham Bell, Orville Wright, Marie Curie, who discovered radium, died because of it, but radium is what made X-rays possible, which that technology has helped save many lives. And that was discovered before anyone knew it was dangerous. So, but I gave examples of that. People like Nikola Tesla, who was not a Nobel Prize winner, but he was an Elliott Cresson Medal winner. The Nobel Prize system wasn't set up until like the 70s, and it's been proven over and over again that they've actually been very political, especially more recently. In fact, the head of the Nobel Assembly, I'm going to talk about him today too. The head of the Nobel Assembly, I'm going to do another screen share for you. Let's bring up something on him. This guy. Let's go ahead and pull him up and do the screen share on him. This is fun. The head of the Nobel Assembly, Dr. Bjorn Nordenstrom, was the head of the Nobel Assembly, which is comprised of over 50 medical minds, approximately 50 of the top medical minds in the world, right? Their job is to award the Nobel Prize in medicine. He was the chairman, he was the leader over that. And this is an article that was published in Discover magazine saying that he claims to have found in the human body a heretofore unknown universe of electrical activity that's the very foundation of the healing process, and it is as critical to well-being as the flow of blood. If he's right, he's made the most profound biomedical discovery of the century. They said, stop or we will fire you. That's what happened after he started getting published. You better quit or we will fire you. That's basically, even the medical profession themselves, they have proven to be in several ways more political than they have been scientific over and over and over again. The medical profession themselves, the AMA in particular, what I'm talking about. We can get into a lot of detail of how that has grown to be within the laws of empowerment. It gets into the whole history of Standard Oil Trust, the first NGO that came out of that, which is Rockefeller Foundation, and how they've tried to rule the world. But what's really important is all of that seems to be shifting right now while you're safe at home. While people are in this somewhat of, some people, we give a lot of gratitude right now for the truck drivers who keep making it possible for people to have food on their tables and things like that. And other people that are still part of the critical structure, as President Trump has said, that we need to keep that in process. So interesting. Who knows what this is going to look like when all is said and done, but things are changing. I'm going to go back to the other screen share here. I want to talk about more about the stem cells. So let's do this. Here we are. So that's it. Back to the single cell of the egg, which is right there. How can that chicken egg grow into a whole chick, that one stem cell turn into a whole chick without any external source of oxygen? Well, that superoxide dismutase that Joe McCord discovered can reconvert 1 million superoxides per second back to oxygen. And I'm checking my time right now because I've got to be done in about 12 minutes here. And I'm going to get on the next presentation at 2 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, which is going to share a lot more of the how-to. But this is really important. You know, some kids, when they have head injuries, they say they're just more resilient when they don't have when they're not paralyzed. But then when older people have this injury, they only be paralyzed. My main vein in my head was blocked for 9 months. The superior sagittal sinus, the main vein that's supposed to draw blood back to the heart from the brain, was blocked for 9 months. And I wasn't paralyzed. I wasn't dead, let alone paralyzed, which is something that my neurologist had a hard time, he couldn't understand it. And he wouldn't listen to anything that I had to say. I ended up firing him because of a bunch of things that he did, which was basically malpractice. And I threatened him with malpractice right to his face. But one of the things that, the reason why is because it took him 9 months to get me an MRV, which is an MRI vessels in the head, while I was basically screaming with PTSD. I was yelling obscenities that I'm not proud of, and anxiety and all the things that go along with having a traumatic brain injury, a TBI. I had all of that. And finally, when I got it, I had it cleared within less than a week. I felt it clear. And then that whole time, that 9-month period, I felt a lot of back pressure, but I was on a special technology that activates a certain segment of genes that they call survival genes. In fact, about 5,000 of them, according to the world's largest gene database, Ingenuity in Japan, are regulated by NRF2. And there's some simple things that activate that. But I was on that technology. And more, I'm going to teach more of that within the next class. I'm going to give everyone an opportunity to be activated with it in a special way right here, right now, today, for free. I'm going to do an instant mass healing demo. And I have someone here who's part of it. And then next class, I'm going to teach a simple deep breathing technique that keeps the lungs clear, so that, and all elderly people especially need that right now, today. There's a simple breath technique that I use that I've used for many years and I've taught, called the singing breath, actually. But it doesn't take a genius. There are basic things that activate the lymphatic vessels, which are the subpressure vessels, that healthy environment is a subpressure environment, according to Arthur C. Guyton. He is the author of the medical textbook of physiology, which is the most commonly used medical textbook of physiology in the United States today, still today. My father is the one who made him famous. He held up Guyton's book and quoted from it 200 cities a year, 5 to 6 cities a week for 17 years. And he made Guyton famous. Guyton was a student of Merson's. It was the only one written by a lymphologist. Merson was one of the pioneers in lymphology, what we were showing you. So the way they shut him up is in 1966, they formed the International Society of Lymphology with the help of international military forces. Somebody had really deep pockets and a lot of pull to gather all the top medical minds in the world, the department heads of medical schools and universities who did know about albumin leaving the bloodstream. Anybody who knew about that, they gathered them up and put them in an organization. They couldn't talk about it anymore. They're still teaching Starling's hypothesis, which says it doesn't happen at all, that they don't even leave. And if any do leave, it doesn't change the theory. Yes, that has been debunked over and over and over again, but they decided to take all the research on it and bury it. And apparently they forgot what they buried, because when they set up PubMed.gov, there's a whole bunch of other studies. When you look up H.S. Merson, Hyman Samuel Merson, and you have to look before they quieted him up in 1966, everything before 66. If you know how to do the time search, it's available to the public right now. And it's like they took a big butterfly net during the 1966 period and they gathered up all those studies that they could to bury him. But they forgot what they buried, apparently, when they published PubMed. So it takes all those studies and makes them available online. Most people aren't going that far back in history to see what Hyman Samuel Merson was publishing back then. They're looking at recent studies, because science has, for the most part, continued. And I'm going to go ahead and let's pull up a quote before I do the instant mass healing demo, which is going to be awesome. It doesn't take me very long to do it. Let's pull up a quote from one of the past presidents who I mentioned, who I said I would quote today, the Lymphatic Manifesto. Pull this up. And this is from Hyman Samuel Merson. Let's go ahead and share that. This is after my father presented his formulas, and then 2 years later, he was getting people like John R. Castley Smith on his advisory board, who is the past president from Australia. And they had a debate on the floor that John R. Castley Smith led, and John R. Castley Smith gave this article called A Proposal for a Lymphatic Manifesto, which we'd adopted just as a lymphatic manifesto. And in that, he said in 1983, of the many millions who would suffer from widespread ignorance, he said, some will lose their lives, some will lose their limbs, many will suffer needless pain and incapacity. Many research workers will get incorrect results. All of this through simple ignorance of the importance of lymphatics. No other system is so neglected. We're mostly lymph. And they're not teaching, you know, they typically teach about a half an hour to 2 hours, depending on which medical school you go to, about the lymphatic system. And the person teaching is not an expert. They basically skip over most of what is even in the textbooks on it. And in this article, another thing that Castley Smith revealed is that out of every 200 pages, 1 out of 200 was dedicated to the lymphatic system. That's right, less than 0.5%. Less than 1 page of 200 pages. I asked him in person how he got the numbers. He says he added up all the pages and did the math himself. Simple. So that's, with that, you might want to, you know, turn in your listening ears, because there is science available that has continued to be ongoing. My father picked up the ball in '67. It's interesting, the timeline of how that happened. That's when he was shown to go back to school, become a doctor, to teach people how to heal themselves. He had a big epiphany that got him on his really, it was his life mission. And he ended up making some really important discoveries and contributions. So I've continued to do the same kind of thing. I was born on Father's Day. And, you know, it's interesting how things have evolved. But let's go ahead and do the instant mass healing demo with the time that we have left here. What I want you to do, and I'm going to actually go into more detail in the blessing of the creation sequence. If you go get it right now, there's a replay that's available on the blessing of the creation sequence link. I'm going to also, I might do it live again today. I'm going to continue to update people of when things are happening. If you continue with each event as we go along, get an idea of when that's going to happen. 2 o'clock, we're going to do the more techniques, like the deep breathing and things. We're going to share more. But the basic things that activate lymphatics is deep breathing, bouncing, stroking, compressing tissues, and energy. And I've got someone here who's Daisy, who was here last week for the live broadcast. Her hips were off this far. It was actually, the left side was up this high, her right side was down here. And within a split second activation, her hips leveled off. She'd had sciatic pain for many years. Will you come and share what your experience was with people, Daisy? She just happens to be here with us today. So we've got a green screen effect, and we're both on the beach here now. So I'm going to go ahead, and our camera is down here in the corner on this particular model of computer here. So you share your story. It was a week ago, and have you had any sciatic pain? What's happened to the pain?
I haven't had any pain. I had an injury back in 1998, and it's been chronic. I've done therapy, chiropractor, you name it, all kinds of stuff. And it was amazing how he adjusted my hip, and I haven't had any pain.
Awesome.
Yeah, I did notice that one side of my hip was higher, and it was really causing me pain. And I was worried about, like, oh my gosh, I may have a hip replacement. You know, when you go to these doctors, they're like, well, I think I need to replace your hip.
Awesome. So instead of taking 2 hours or more to verbalize what all I did, I looked at the hip bones, the top of the iliac crest, to see which one's high or low. I can also look at the bottom of the feet to see what's going on with the neck alignment. If the neck muscle is contracting on one side, it tends to roll the hip back on that side. So if someone's sitting in a chair with their legs out at a 90-degree angle, if one's short, then all of this also tells us that the endocrine glands are struggling. So
Also, too, I usually had a lump in the middle of the bottom, back in my palm of my feet, and I'm wondering
why
if
that's
that
going.
was causing this, because I've been like really putting my hand and feeling, and
How's that lump now since the activation? What happened to the lump? I didn't even talk about that.
Yeah,
this is the first time you mentioned it to me.
Yeah, but
what happened to the lump since
I
then?
noticed the difference. It's
leveled
out.
Huh?
Yeah, it's disappeared. It's leveled out. When
So
I touch it, it's not hurting anymore.
It does have to do with an organ or a gland. Thank you very much, Daisy. I'm going to go ahead and I appreciate your story here. I'm going to go ahead and finish up the broadcast now with an instant mass healing demo, which is the same data transfer that we did for you and everyone that was listening. I want you to know what time it is right now. It's 1:45, which is time to stop the broadcast. It's 1:45 on the 29th of March in 2020. That's Pacific Standard Time. If you come to this timestamp now, anytime in the future, you could actually, if you know how to come to this timestamp, if you can evolve yourself spiritually, people need upgrades to know how to do that. But everyone has the right hardware. It's just a matter of having the right software and knowing how to use it. It is possible to access this. It could have been possible for everyone in the past to access this. They could remote view. Not everyone knows how to do that, but everyone also can remote view. But not everyone has developed the software, upgraded software to know exactly how to do it. The awareness that it is possible is a good start. And it's possible for everyone. So yeah, there's a lot of new technology that's going to be rolling out now. We all produce DMT in the pituitary, which is called the God particle, and in our lungs. And with that said, I want everyone to take a deep breath. And if you intend in tapping into me in this broadcast, I'm in Point Loma, basically in La Playa, Point Loma, overlooking Coronado Island, San Diego Bay. I did a lot more than offer just one healing within that. That was actually multidimensional. So if you want to get an idea of what that was about, though, there's something I do called Blessing of the Creation Sequence that integrates some really cool scripting that gives you at least one of the other facets that, that I've integrated with this particular activation. Those of you who have done this now, if you could have someone in your space, if you could have had someone just put their fingers on your iliac crest before and after, you ought to notice everyone now is leveling off. So yeah, with that, it's going to be interesting to see what people's actual experiences are with this. This is kind of new. I'm not used to doing a broadcast like this online that's regardless of where you are and when you are even, that you can access this. So there's a lot of new things that I have to share that, you know, it's a new day in a new way. Here we are. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this broadcast. Here it is. It says 1:48 p.m. on my dial here in Pacific Standard Time where I'm at. Hopefully we'll be able to encourage you to come into the very next presentation that we're doing, which going to be beautiful. Look forward to seeing as many of you as we can on that show. And I'm going to go ahead and end the broadcast. So go to the same source that you found this broadcast from, the same exact source, and click the next link for the next broadcast.